As per the name suggests, we're going to be talking about The Flash and its inevitable comparison to its inspiration, the Flashpoint paradox. First, we're going to be going over the Flashpoint paradox to explain exactly what this story actually is, why it's here, and how it could have been used expertly in the DC cinematic universe. As we know, or you may not know, the DC cinematic universe is ending. With the upcoming Aquaman 2 release, that will be the final DC cinematic universe film that began with Snyder's Man of Steel. Honestly, I like more of the DC Cinematic Universe films than I dislike. I just feel like the aim for a lot of those films was not exactly quite as focused as it could have been. The comics certainly have plenty of time and plenty of writers to develop their story. Like the Flashpoint comics line, I haven't read them, but I have looked through a few pages from what I've been interested in, particularly among the Batman character and all that. They have plenty of issues over months, even years, that ends at the end of Flashpoint Paradox. It ends with the end of that current continuity of comics and brings in the new 52 comics universe. At the end of Flash's Flashpoint adventures, when he fixes the timeline and all that and goes back to the present, things are a little bit different. The animation in this film at the end is different. It becomes the new 52 animation serialization. The DCAU followed that type of shtick, so as to say. The new 52 movies used different animation from the animation style that preceded it, and of course the Tomorrowverse DCAU films use different animation to new 52's animation. So there's a consistency with all that. There's a consistency with the way things are drawn in the new 52 and the previous continuity, and in the following Tomorrowverse continuity in the comics as well. I'm not a comic geek, so I don't know all of the storylines of that, but I did look into the Flashpoint fairly well, and this movie does follow more or less the bulk of the Flashpoint storyline, with a few minor changes here and there, such as where some characters die and so on, because this film has maybe an 80-something minute runtime, and the comics had, like 20, 30, a lot of issues, quite a few issues of story that they could flesh out this final little universe with, if that makes sense. Flash here is 2 hours and 20 minutes, and even then it doesn't feel like it's that long to tell the story that it needs to tell, particularly regarding to all of the extra stuff that it added in. And honestly, if you ask me, if it followed this type of storyline instead, you would probably even need a longer runtime than this film had to tell that story a little bit more accurately, cinematic film-wise. Though this one compacted everything into 80 minutes really well. They didn't spend too much time on a lot of the characters because they expected you to know everybody. And honestly, I love DC far more than Marvel in regards to the animation. You know, I grew up on Batman. I've been a Batman fan for 25 plus years. Ever since I was a small child in the 90s watching Batman the Animated Series on television, I have been enamored with this character all the way to now, and I still love the Batman character. So naturally, I was very watching this, knowledgeable about the Batman character and what happened with Batman in Flashpoint versus what they decided to do in The Flash. The one thing that I want to point out in Flashpoint with this Batman character is that this is not Bruce Wayne. To explain that, both continuities try to explain exactly what Flash did to change the timeline so much. Now, they don't exactly say Flashpoint in this film, but it's basically a Flashpoint. It's an intersecting timeline where you make a change at one point. It impacts that timeline's future and its past. It's like a ripple effect through time that spreads out. So if, for example, Flash goes back to 1988 or something and saves his mom, then that might actually impact Batman's, Bruce Wayne's past in the 70s or something. So if you go back into the 70s and something changes in that crime alley, that heavily changes the future of Gotham and of the future of Batman itself. Timey-wimey, basically. In this film, we open with the Justice League solving a crime, basically. They help the Flash take out a syndicate of villains, and we learn about Eobard Thawne, Zoom, Professor Zoom. I'm going to be calling him Zoom, not Reverse Flash. Zoom has not been introduced in the Snyderverse, so naturally we can't use the character of Zoom. So instead, the character that we use in The Flash is another Flash, another Barry Allen, which I could get behind it, but technically, you could use two Ezra Millers here. You technically could, because in this continuity, to my understanding, Eobard Thawne's, I believe his grandfather was Malcolm Thawne, who was the lost twin look-alike to the Flash, with the Flash being like his great-uncle. That's why Thawne couldn't kill the Flash, because if he killed the Flash, Thawne would not be able to be born, technically, so as to say, I guess. What else? What else? I'm trying to think. Timey-wimey says, I don't know how being an uncle impacts Thawne or whatnot, but that's what Zoom is for that. But in the present timeline, there is a Malcolm Thawne that you could have introduced in this Flash film to also be played by Ezra Miller, but they had two Ezra Millers here to have a different story that they wanted to tell while adapting the Flashpoint paradox in a very different paradigm, utilizing stories from the Snyderverse instead. I had an idea of what I wanted to say with this, mostly in regards to the changes that were made. So if I could go down the plot line and talk about each change, I could do that a lot easier than trying to be a little bit more rambling here. When we talk about the Justice League helping the Flash out, the same type of story happens here, where Batman reprised by Ben Affleck, and Wonder Woman reprised by her actress that I can't remember her name at this precise moment. I know what it is, but I just can't remember it. I'm terrible with names. So Batman and Wonder Woman come in to help the Flash, and one of the big issues here that I have is that Cyborg was not here. And I really think both Cyborg and Aquaman should have been in this opening bit. I understand not being able to have Superman show up, but Cyborg and Aquaman are very important to the Flashpoint paradox. As you can see clearly, these 5 characters did show up in some shape or form. Well, not this type, but these 4 definitely did in this some shape or form here. But I feel like you should have added Cyborg into here to help expand Cyborg's story. You may have to make this film 3 hours long to properly do all the things you wanted to do there, because, we've only ever had one movie with Cyborg. We needed more time with him. Thankfully, the Snyder Cut Justice League gave us a little bit more time with both the Flash and Cyborg that we really needed to flesh out those characters. I do feel like we needed a Cyborg solo movie. We needed a Batman solo movie. And let's go off topic again, once again here. I am going to be pulling out one of my handy dandy little notepad things here, if I could find one. Here we go. Here's one here. I'm going to be pulling out my handy dandy little pen here. We're going to write down Man of Steel is the first Man of Steel here. This is the first Snyderverse film, alright? It introduces Superman in this new continuity expertly, and I really enjoyed that character. I really enjoyed that film. Most people said the CGI was great. I liked it. Honestly, I felt like the CG fighting and all that stuff with the whole DBZ-esque lookingness, it felt like a Superman type of fight where Kryptonians are fighting each other. Naturally, you could have Superman punch a guy really hard, he would go flying through buildings. So clearly, it makes sense to see the carnage and the fighting going on there. So, Man of Steel is fine. No problems there. Then Snyder decides to skip Batman because apparently he thinks we have too much Batman already, that we know Batman's origin story. But we do not know the Batman of the Snyderverse's universe. So he thinks all the Batman we need is to just give us Batman versus Superman. And in this Batman vs. Superman movie, we also introduce Wonder Woman. I am okay with introducing Wonder Woman in Batman vs. Superman, because Wonder Woman would eventually get her own standalone movie. Kind of a prequel, is a prequel to the whole Snyderverse itself. I feel like in between Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, we should have gotten a Batman solo movie. Batman, right there. And I do not think we needed another origin story. We don't need yet another origin story. We just needed a Batman movie. Just introduce a Batman, lighten his Batmaning, to give us an introduction to this character that feels like it fleshes him out without wasting so much time doing that in Batman vs. Superman. Batman vs. Superman should be a little bit more concise in what it was trying to do. It was giving you too much time introducing the Batman character in a way that I can understand how people just didn't like that movie. I liked the movie, but I can understand how people just didn't like Batman vs. Superman. So I do feel like we needed to have a movie in between there called Batman Solo. And then we have Aquaman. I honestly love this movie. It came out after the Justice League, but I'm going to be putting it under Wonder Woman right here, because I feel like it should have been released before Justice League, honestly. I love the character of Aquaman. I love the movie of Aquaman. I love the color, the cinematics, the CG. It felt like Avatar underwater, with all of that color. Above ground in the land, it dampens the color, it drains the saturation. But when you're underwater, there's so much color that is beautiful to look at, honestly, to me. So Aquaman is really good. It's a really fun film. There's a lot of globetrotting. If you don't like globetrotting and all that crap, you're probably not going to like it. I loved it. It was a great little adventure story. It was an adventure story. And it's adapting the Throne of Atlantis Justice League story. Naturally, they didn't include the rest of the Justice League for the movie, but I think they did a really good attempt at telling the Throne of Atlantis Aquaman story without including the other members of the Justice League, if that makes sense. Then we got your Justice League movie. We have Justice League. See, I'm already going off topic, but I whatever. So we have Justice League. In Justice League, we have the whole mother boxes and Steppenwolf who doesn't have a magic carpet for you to ride. Honestly, every time Steppenwolf's name was mentioned, I hear the band in my head. I hear it in my head. Whenever Steppenwolf talks, I just hear the singer singing Magic Carpet Ride. Whatever the guy, it made the movie hilarious to me. Hilarious. And then we had the 4-hour Snyder Cut version, which I prefer. It introduces, since technically that we didn't have Aquaman first, it introduces Aquaman, Cyborg, and the Flash. It introduces 3 characters, and it has to take time out of its runtime to introduce these 3 characters to the DC Snyderverse. And the reason why we got Justice League right after Batman vs. Superman is because they were trying to compete with Marvel. Don't do that! Competing with Marvel, trying to rush out the Justice League because the Avengers was a massive hit, ended up hurting your film because you rushed it. Don't rush the DC cinematic. You don't rush at all. Take your time. If you need to make about 4 or 5 more films before you make the Justice League film, that's fine. But the Snyderverse version of the Justice League, it is an excellent Cyborg introduction starting point. Cyborg works well in an ensemble. I don't think a Cyborg standalone movie would have worked so well, but as part of an ensemble, much like the Hulk character, Cyborg operates really well. The Flash also kind of, I feel, needs an ensemble, since also the Flashpoint Paradox was a Justice League movie, having all these other characters helping out, especially in here. We also have some sort of an ensemble with Supergirl and Batman helping the Flash out, so it's fine. Cyborg was fine in here, the Flash was fine in here, but you shouldn't have all introduced Aquaman in this. Aquaman should have had his solo movie before Justice League came out. Batman should have had his solo movie before Batman vs. Superman came out. Introduce Wonder Woman and Batman vs. Superman. Release your Wonder Woman prequel. Now we know who all 3 of those characters are. Make your Aquaman standalone film. And then we do Justice League, where Batman goes to recruit Aquaman, a character whose story we already know now, so that when he shows up here, we don't have to waste too much time talking about Aquaman. So now we care about these characters, we know who they all are. Maybe have Martian Manhunter show up, and what happened to Green Lantern, man? That Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds, honestly, I kind of liked it. I know. Dude, this guy is poor taste. No, I liked the Green Lantern because I honestly like the Green Lantern as a character. I was happy to see a movie with him because we don't have any. Why? I don't know. But the Ryan Green Lantern movie is great. And I really learned to appreciate the Green Lantern character ever since the Lego Batman 3 game, which is surprising, I know, but the Batman 3 game was based off the Green Lantern stories, where Brainiac is capturing the other Lanterns to use their rings in tandem with his mechanicalness to shrink the universe to put in his collection. And it was a delightful little story. We got to visit the other Lantern worlds. We got to learn about the other Lanterns. Maybe not as in-depth as an actual comic serialization would do, but the Green Lantern's little motto, the phrase, "Beware my power, Green Lanterns," that is one of the most hype-building small little poem things that I've ever heard. It's an amazing thing, and Green Lantern is an amazing character, and he should have been part of the Snyderverse at some point. If you want to introduce him after the Justice League, fine, but we should have had a Green Lantern movie in here somewhere. And also, since we're making Shazam, they made Shazam. They made Wonder Woman 2, Wonder Woman 84, which is also a prequel to Batman vs. Superman. And then we had Black Adam. I liked Black Adam. It was an excellent movie. It was amazing. The only issue is James Gunn came in and undid everything that Black Adam tried to set up, so that's probably why Black Adam just didn't do as well. I honestly feel like if people came out to watch Black Adam and it made over $1 billion, you could have saved the Snyderverse. You could have saved this universe. If people went to watch Black Adam, we could have kept Henry Cavill as Superman, because money talks. That's right, money talks. If you wanted to keep Henry Cavill as Superman, this was your chance to do that by going to watch Black Adam in the theaters to build the box office up, because the money is all the big investors think about. If they see, oh look, this movie didn't make money, who cares? James Gunn, come in and help us out. James Gunn goes, hey, Superman, go away. And there's no more Henry Cavill after Black Adam tried to bring Henry Cavill Snyderverse. You could have salvaged this, but nobody came to watch Black Adam. So that's whatever. And then they made a Shazam 2. Shazam 2, I haven't seen it. And then we have The Flash. We have a Blue Beetle. I haven't seen that one yet. Blue Beetle. And then we're going to get Aquaman 2, which I do plan to see. And look at all those movies. Man of Steel, we should have gotten a Batman movie. We have Batman vs. Superman. Had we gotten a Batman movie after Man of Steel, it would have probably been a better film, to me personally. I liked it, but it would have been a better film. Wonder Woman, good. Aquaman, good. Justice League could have been a whole lot better. Man, it could have been a whole lot better. And then after a bunch of these, this should have been your phase 2 of the DCAU, DCCU, DCEU, the DC Cinematic Universe, live-action Cinematic Universe. Shazam, introduced that character. Wonder Woman 84 didn't need to exist. Black Adam, good. Shazam 2, fine. Flash. We'll get to that. Blue Beetle, haven't seen it. Shazam 2, fine. Aquaman 2, great. I plan to see it. And I may eventually plan to see Blue Beetle, and I may plan to eventually see Shazam 2, just I haven't gotten to him yet. I got to Flash first, because I love the Flashpoint storyline. This is going to be a very long video. Just hang in there. This is going to be a long one, alright? But this is your Snyderverse, okay? That's the Snyderverse. Compared to Marvel, it does feel like it doesn't have the proper reins that it needed. This was an excellent introductory film. I love the Man of Steel. The Superman character in general is an amazing character, though fans of Superman probably hated this version of Man of Steel because he was a little bit more edgy, a little bit more, but then, you know, Superman needed some sort of change, some sort of shift here and there or in various continuities. I mean, come on, look at Red Sun, look at Infamous. Okay, we have various forms of Superman where he becomes a little bit too edgy, a little bit too... Ugh. So, Man of Steel is fine. It is a fine film for this Snyderverse. Batman should have been a film, though. Yeah. But then after this, after Man of Steel, they started to rush things. Batman vs. Superman comes out, I guess because of the Avengers was coming on. So they needed an ensemble. We needed an ensemble movie, so let's get some more superheroes into this sequel. We need to push everything. We need to push. Oh, go. Compete with Marvel. Don't compete with Marvel. Marvel had a big head start. You started a little bit too late. What was this, like 2013, 2014? Yeah, Marvel's been around since 2008. You are a little bit late to the party here, pal. So, yeah, whatever. But since they're competing with Marvel, a lot of this falls to the wayside. Batman vs. Superman falls to the wayside. Wonder Woman was a good save. Justice League was not a good save. They rushed that film. There's 2 hours. The studio was also admittedly part of the problem, condensing the film down to 2 hours. You're introducing 3 new superheroes to the Snyderverse, and you give the Snyder/Joss Whedon 2 hours. Of course it's gonna suck! So naturally we have the 4-hour Snyder Cut, which is a little bit better. Shazam, excellent little film. I've gone over this before, but Shazam is released somewhere around, I don't exactly know when, but it was after the need to be fast mooshing with Marvel. Like, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm looking for a word. This is what happens when you know so many words, you forget them. Expedience? No, it can't be expedience. Rushed? Yeah, there you go. They don't feel as rushed to compete with Marvel around the post-Justice League era because they've already failed. So they're just going to put Shazam out. Why not? Captain Thunder! It's great. It's a great film, and the tone is understandably a lot different from these previous films. And the tone going forward is also going to be a little bit different, outside of maybe Black Adam, which is still an excellent film. But after Justice League, things started to take a Marvel comedic route. And it comes to a big head in here with this is very comedic in a lot of ways that Flashpoint in general should not necessarily be. Flashpoint's timeline is one of the most depressing timelines that the Flash could have ever visited. The only positive in this timeline is that his mom is alive. That's the only good thing about the Flashpoint timeline, is that his mom is alive. That's it. So after that little rant about how they completely messed up, they have the Flash, and they don't even put the Flash out last. If you want to do a Flashpoint paradox story, the Flash should have came out last. Which means you have your Shazam 2, your Blue Beetle, your Aquaman 2, and then the Flash. The Flash should have been your last DC Cinematic Universe film. Because the Flash is the character that you use to reset the universe. The Flash will reset everything and change it all up. And even at the end, in the epilogue, after he's changed the universe and reset it to the new continuity, you can have your epilogue with a different Flash character, a different actor. That's an excellent thing, an excellent idea to do. But they don't do it. They don't do it. Anyways, we open with the Justice League doing their little thing, and I honestly feel like Aquaman should have been part of that opening segment. Aquaman is in an epilogue in this film. He's in the film's post-credits, little teaser epilogue, whatever. And honestly, I feel like you should have had Jason Momoa in this film in general. Mainly, we'll get to that. We'll get to why. We'll get to why. But you should have had him in here. And it was an excellent time to have this movie come out after Aquaman 2 for a very important reason. Very, very important reason. So, Cyborg and Aquaman should have been in this opening ensemble where the Flash gets to just do his save-the-day shtick. The Justice League come in to help out, to do their little shtick as well. And then Flash feels like he misses his mom. He talks to Batman in this film about the trauma of losing their parents and how he could have gone back if he was a little bit faster. And this is the same thing. Flash is talking to Batman, saying if he was just a little bit faster, he could have saved whatever. And Batman's like, don't do that, don't rush things like that. Some things just happen, it makes us who we are, yada yada yada. Flash is going to his mom's grave to put flowers there like he always does, and his wife shows up. She's a natural redhead, so naturally, guess what happens in this one? She's not a redhead in this film, sadly. I don't understand the genocide of redheads. It's a meme at this point, but I've noticed it now myself, that so many characters who are natural redheads in comics are just, they're not redheads. They're not even the same skin tone in the live action renditions, and it feels like there's absolutely, positively no reason to do that, to change that. You have no reason to do that. if you want to keep the redhead, let the redheads be. Leave them alone. We're not going to get into that rant, or we'll be here for 4 hours. But, yeah, Flash's wife, the redhead lady, I don't know her name, talks to him about consolations, and he says, if I were just a little bit faster, I could have saved, yada, 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 blah, 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 and then we go do the Justice League thing, and he goes, I could have saved her, yada, yada, I'm going to go for a run, Batman, and then he goes for a run, and then immediately right after stopping Eobard Thawne with the Justice League, he wakes up at his desk at his normal position in the forensics division, and the world seems to have changed a little bit. He's still the only Flash, though. There's no 2 Flashes, there's just 1 Flash. You see, what happens is, Flash goes back, he changes something in the past. He wakes up in the present, inhabiting the body of the Barry that has existed in this timeline up to that present timeline. It's like he just wakes up. So, it's, okay. Alright, so, let's say we have timeline. We're in the middle right here. Barry goes back to here to change something. There is a Barry already in this timeline, a young child Barry, who will then grow up with the altered events that Barry changed in this timeline. Barry doesn't just run back to the present, he goes back and he changes something here. And the Barry here, the child Barry from the past, grows up in this altered timeline with his mom alive, all the way into here. And then this present Barry who went back to change things suddenly wakes up in this new altered timeline that branches off to here. How about that? There you go. So he goes back to change that, and he wakes up here. This Barry wakes up here after going back to change this. So this Barry is gone by the time of here because they have basically merged into the same Barry. I know this is very confusing. Time travel is never easy to explain. This is branching timelines. This isn't multiverse theory, though both the DC and the Marvel... fun fact, DC did the multiverse first. You see, DC in the comics did the multiverse first, then Marvel copycatted them with their own multiverse. And then in the cinematic universe, since Marvel had a head start with that, they did the multiverse first in the cinematic universe, and now DC is following Marvel's footsteps, even though DC did it first. So even though people say, I'm so sick of this multiverse, DC did it first, man. Okay? That's a little... I'm getting distracted there. But that's what happens in the Flashpoint. The paradox timeline is that Flash goes back here. He does not just suddenly reappear here. He doesn't just suddenly run back forward in time. He has to basically just... to Flash, it's like an instant. It's like he changes time and then he just wakes up here. But time will just flow. The years will flow. And there is a Barry here who grows up in a different timeline with new memories. He remembers every birthday with his mom and all these other new events of the changes. There's no Superman. There's a different Batman. Wonder Woman and Aquaman are very different. Cyborg is now the superhero of the world that Superman used to be. Blah, 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 blah. And then Barry just suddenly wakes up here going like, what's going on? It's like he doesn't... And to everybody around him, it's like this Barry has amnesia and doesn't remember this. The Barry who wakes up here remembers this, the unaltered timeline. And the longer he stays in this altered timeline, he will remember the Barry of this altered timeline's memories. The memories start to merge together. Barry basically becomes a living paradox because he is both an unaltered timeline Barry with memories of the altered timeline Barry, but he's one Barry. Does that make sense? One Flash. Barry Allen is Flash. So if I keep saying Barry, it's Flash. All right. I know this is very, very messy, but original timeline, branched timeline. Okay. So there's 2 now because of the change here. But the thing is, Flash created a Flashpoint, so as to say. All right. We have another line here. Flashpoint. So Flash goes back here and changes time here to create a new branched time. He wakes up here, time goes forward. Well, he also created a new past, okay? Because after changing here, he created a ripple effect where there's also changes in the past as well. I briefly went over this earlier, but now I have a little handy drawing to explain these things. He didn't just branch the timeline to create a new future, he also created a new past because of the Flashpoint that he created here. It is a ripple effect through time, outwards, outwards, outwards. And it might seem very small. It might seem incredibly tiny little minuscule changes that have catastrophically big outcomes. For example, the trajectory of Kal-El/Superman's ship does not crash into Kansas. It instead changes a little bit and crashes into Metropolis, where he is then picked up by the military and kept into solitary confinement in a secret government classified facility that not even Cyborg, who is the son of the president in this timeline, knows about. He doesn't know about Superman, that he's been held in captivity his entire life, basically, since he was a baby. The Batman, for example, that timeline changes. In Crime Alley, the person who dies changes. Batman, as we know, has his parents die, Thomas and Martha Wayne. They both die to this criminal who runs away. Well, in this altered timeline, the criminal does not shoot Thomas. The criminal shoots Bruce. Bruce is the character who dies in Crime Alley in the Flashpoint Paradox timeline. There is no Bruce Wayne in the timeline that Barry wakes up in. Instead, Barry ends up meeting a very different Batman. The Batman that Barry meets is Thomas Wayne. Thomas survived Crime Alley, a very changed man, a very dark man. Bruce was his whole world, the best thing he ever did. And as soon as Bruce died, it all fell apart. Martha also survived, but Batman has to have a Joker. So, fate's cruel joke for Thomas is that his wife's mind completely broke at the sight of her dead child. And then she covers her mouth with her son's blood, and it forms a sort of smile. And then suddenly, ever so subtly, the crying starts to turn to laughter. And then she starts laughing hysterically. Up at the sky, she removes her hand from her mouth and sees that Bruce's blood has formed a smile on her face. That's right, folks. Martha Wayne is the Flashpoint timeline's Joker. That is sad, isn't it? That is depressing. The Flashpoint Paradox timeline is supposed to be depressing. It's not supposed to be jokes and all sorts of comedic hijinks. It is one of the most depressing atmospheres you could ever have imagined. The one light in this timeline is that Barry's mom is alive. Barry wakes up and he sees that there's some sort of bad stuff happening in the altered timeline, and he tries to activate his flash suit or whatever, and he finds that he doesn't have any powers. Because in this altered timeline, he is waking up in the body of a Barry who has lived the altered timeline. Which means this Barry doesn't have his powers. He never got them. Much like in this Flash movie, as Flash meets another Flash, a younger Flash, who never got his powers because his mom has been alive this entire time. Timey-wimey, two Flashes and all that stuff. They don't get consistent with how many Flashes there's supposed to be whenever he goes back. They claim that it's a multiverse thing. So if you go back to the past, we have to have another timeline thing. I don't blame you for not understanding a single word I'm saying in regards to time travel. Most people don't most people who try to explain it in the films, we don't understand it half the time. But I'm going to try to be as explanatory as I could possibly be, which isn't really good because I'm terrible at that. So in Flash, the movie Flash, not Flashpoint Flash, we have the timeline as it is. Flash is here. He goes back to here to change things. He is able to run back to the present, but he's running back to a different timeline. So he goes back and changes things. So he goes here, which means this is a new timeline where there's a different past and a different future. So he doesn't go exactly to here. He goes right around here because there's another Flash from here who runs in and knocks him out before he can run back to the present. So he wakes up here during the events of Man of Steel, and in this timeline, instead of a younger Ben Affleck Batman, it is an older Michael Keaton Batman. So he wakes up in the timeline where the Tim Burton Batman movies took place. And there's no Superman, there's no Cyborg, or any of the other meta-humans, basically, because, the Snyderverse DC film universe didn't exactly have enough time to explain all of the stuff going on here. We don't have Shazam. He's a little bit too young to exist. Wonder Woman, they don't exactly do too much to explain where she is, because I guess even the writers of The Flash knew that Wonder Woman probably should exist in this timeline, but they couldn't find her. And then they tried to find where Aquaman is, and they couldn't find him either, because they at least try to explain that in that as a joke. Flash finds Aquaman's father's phone number, and he calls his phone number at the lighthouse and speaks to the same actor from the Aquaman movie, only this guy has married a different woman, so there's no Aquaman in this timeline, which kind of sucks. But, how alternate timelines work, Aquaman could still exist, but he could be the son, a full-blooded Atlantean. We don't know exactly if he is a full-blooded Atlantean in this timeline, the Flashpoint timeline, from Flashpoint Paradox. But we do have an Aquaman, and we do have a Wonder Woman, and very different things happen in this timeline. In the Flashpoint timeline, the Atlanteans and the Amazonians try to reconcile with one another and make peace. Aquaman and Wonder Woman start a romantic relationship. Mira, who gets jealous of this relationship, challenges Wonder Woman to a fight. Wonder Woman defends herself. Mira attacked first. Wonder Woman defended herself and killed Mira, and then wore Mira's crown as a warning, as a trophy, as the Amazonian way. Arthur learns of Mira's death and thinks it was in cold blood, and he declares war on Wonder Woman and the Amazonians, because in this timeline, he has accepted kinghood of Atlantis. He is the king. Orm is subservient to him. In this timeline, Diana becomes the queen of Amazonia. She does not leave Amazonia to do her Wonder Woman shtick with the rest of the world. She stays there. This is a Diana who is a lot less sympathetic to the plight of the humans. She has been fully engrossed in her culture, in her way, for her entire life. And she's now leading the Amazonians in a war against the Atlanteans. The Atlanteans find some nice, cool technology that they were developing thanks to the energy source provided by Captain Atom. Atom is not in here. We probably should have seen him in one of these movies somewhere, but Captain Atom's in a bunch of DC animated movies, at least, so they can utilize him as an energy source to power more Atlantean technology. So their big Atlantean war machine creates a big super weapon that basically sinks the entirety of Western Europe. And then the Amazonians invade Britain and conquer it, basically, to make it New Themyscira. And their war is destroying the human world, and both of these races absolutely don't care about humans at all. They despise them. This Aquaman basically is the Aquaman who has adopted King Orm's philosophy about the surface world. He is a much darker character. Even though he is fighting this war out of revenge for the loss of Mira, whom he thinks was killed in cold blood, it's basically a lover's quarrel that is destroying the human world. And since we are lacking in a lot of metahumans in this world, Cyborg is basically at his wit's end. He doesn't have too many fighters he can bring together to stop these two. They're just too powerful for him to deal with alone. Which is why he comes to Batman, a jaded Thomas Wayne, who actually fights with guns and kills people because he is a much darker character than Bruce Wayne ever was. And asks Thomas for help, and Thomas says no. The end of the world is nigh, who cares? Let it end. This guy is just done. So Cyborg returns to the government and basically accepts that we have to get involved in the war and try to stop them somehow, and we're not going to win, basically. These guys are going to destroy everything. Flash then wakes up in this timeline, meets up with Batman, because he's the first person he thinks of. He goes to Gotham to meet Batman, and it's not the Bruce Wayne he remembers. But since Flash mentions Bruce Wayne, Thomas suddenly stops attacking him and hears him out. And he's almost sounding hopeful that what Flash is telling him is true. Because if it is, there is a timeline where his beloved son is still alive. And that gives Thomas hope. Something that he didn't have. And that is what enables Thomas to help Flash try to get his powers back, to recreate the accident that gave him his powers in the first place. Since in this timeline, that Barry that has lived in this altered timeline never got his powers. So if Barry got his powers in the middle of here in the main timeline, and he goes into here, in this timeline, there is a different Barry that has been living in this timeline that never got the powers, basically. So, by this point in the present, he has to recreate the accident that happened here, that didn't happen to him, to get his powers. And he does get his powers. He gets his powers back. And they're able to go to Cyborg and say, we're going to help you stop this war, but first we're going to need the help of Superman. And they find out that Superman has been held in captivity in a government-classified location, so the three of them go to rescue Superman from captivity. They break out. Superman is an emaciated man. He has been incredibly malnourished. He has not seen the sun since he was born. So his body is very weak. He's very thin. He doesn't even have any muscles on his arms. He is basically super skinny. So Flash tries to explain to Superman that he and Cyborg are his friends. Thomas is just being aloof and all that stuff. He's just here to see Flash succeed and restore the timeline so that his son can live. So they rescue Superman. And they come out, and the U.S. government is there pointing guns at them, saying, return our property. They view Superman as their property. And they open fire on even their hero, Cyborg. They open fire on all three of them. And then Superman saves the day because he's getting the sun rays again. He's getting powers. And a weakened but strong Superman who's still impervious to bullets stops the government from attacking, and then he flies away after realizing that his I-beams have killed a bunch of people, and he feels terrible about that, and he flies away, because that's how Superman is. He feels terrible about these things, and he flies away and runs away. So now the three of them accept that they don't have too many options. They go to recruit Captain Thunder, which is the Shazam kids, who are also still around in this timeline. So they recruit them, and they go to Britain to basically say, alright, if the world's going to end, let's just go there and fight everybody and try to fix things ourselves. And so the three armies clash here: Aquaman's army, Wonder Woman's army, and then the meta-humans, the ones that are left, come in to have a big three-way brawl. And this is when Zoom shows up to laugh at Flash, because this is the same Zoom from the original timeline. He time traveled with Flash to this new timeline, as he can do, and he doesn't explain how he did it, which is probably better, because if he tried to explain it, we'd probably be here for another 3 hours of him trying to explain how time works with him. But yeah, the Zoom from the original timeline is in the Flashpoint timeline with Flash, and he explains that Zoom did not mess this timeline up. He didn't destroy time. Barry did. Because Barry's mom is alive in this timeline. He got to see his mom, he hugged his mom, and he was very happy for a while until he realized the end of the world is nigh, and he's going to save it. And he realizes that he can't do that. Cyborg is defeated by Aquaman. Batman is broken. He's mortally wounded by, I think it was either Zoom or Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman fights Captain Thunder, Shazam, and honestly the fight is pretty even. Wonder Woman cannot hurt Shazam until she uses her lasso and wraps it around Shazam's body and makes Shazam tell her his weakness, and he shouts Shazam and he turns back into the Shazam kids, and then we go off screen. We move away from the screen because we don't want to see this. The filmmakers don't want you to see this part, but you could hear a child scream. Wonder Woman kills the Shazam kids. This is a dark character in this timeline, okay? So Wonder Woman has stopped the Shazam kids from being able to become Captain Thunder again. So she stops that. And then she continues to fight. She kills Aquaman because Aquaman has been mortally wounded by Superman, who has showed up to save Cyborg from death. But Superman doesn't continue the fight. He just kneels down to a dead Cyborg and realizes everything is so hopeless. Aquaman, in his final moments, releases his doomsday device that he had created thanks to the energy provided by a captured Captain Atom that doesn't exist in this timeline, but exists in this timeline. And basically uses it to destroy the entire island of Britain. All of the meta-humans gathered here, all of the Atlanteans, all of the Amazonians, everybody dies, and Zoom is just laughing until suddenly he's shot from behind by Batman, who has just suddenly shown back up and shoots him right in the middle of the face between the eyes. And he explains to Flash that he needs to run now. He needs to run and fix what he did and undo this disaster bad ending. But before he can do that, Batman gives Flash a letter. A letter written to Bruce. A letter to the son that he lost. To the boy who lost his father. From the father that he lost. In the two timelines, it's like a message across time. It's very beautiful. Flash goes back and he reverses what he did, and his mom is now dead again. And he basically fixes the Flashpoint timeline and reboots it to the new 52 timeline. Flash and Batman meet up. It's new animation. Batman and Flash are now in like new suits and stuff. And Flash hands Batman a letter and says, "I couldn't have done this without this guy, and he wanted me to give you this." And Batman looks at the letter and he realizes the handwriting belongs to that of his father. He sits down in his chair because he can't stand. He removes his cowl and he reads the letter as Bruce, not as Batman. We don't get to exactly see everything that's in this letter, but we do see the ending part. Love forever, your father, Thomas. Batman starts to cry. Bruce Wayne starts to cry. And he turns to Flash and says, "You're one hell of a messenger." End film. Amazing. Flashpoint Paradox is an amazing film. And that ending, wow. If you are a Batman fan, if you've been a Batman fan for 25 plus years, and Batman, the Bruce that you knew, the Batman that you knew from all of the films, all the TV shows that you watched, the Tim Burton movies, the Schumacher movies, the Batman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, Justice League, The Batman, all of these movies, the DCAU movies, Batman never once gets to see his father and his mother again. This is the first time he actually got to interact with his father. A father across time. And he cries. Bruce Wayne cries about that. You feel that emotion. That is one of the most powerful things you could possibly feel. And that doesn't exist in this. That is this film's biggest crime. I have spent so much time not talking about this film. Just talking about this one. Because this is the thing that you should watch. But now, for the reason why we're here, we have to talk about The Flash. We open with Flash, Batman, and Wonder Woman fixing a problem. And then Flash runs off because he feels sad about his mom suddenly. And we get to see him actually go into this little chronosphere where he goes into the Speed Force and he changes time, he changes history. Or he puts a can of tomatoes in his mom's grocery cart basket, which is the reason why his father went out that day. His mom died to get the can of tomatoes. So he fixes that one issue, that one problem in the past, one slight little change, and he creates a new timeline. But he doesn't get to experience those memories. Those memories don't get to belong to him. If they belong to another Barry. And he runs into this Barry because another Barry, a third Barry, how many? Here, why not? So, if this is the present, and this is the part of the time where Barry gets his powers, and this is the part of the timeline where Barry changes the past by saving his mom, then we return to this timeline. So we're right here in the altered timeline in the middle. There is another Flash, a third Flash from the future, who runs from this altered timeline's future, who runs down and knocks Flash back so that Flash cannot go to this present timeline. He goes to present day, the present day from here. So he doesn't go here, he goes to the 2013. Right. Third Flash. So Flash wakes up here in 2013. He finds his mom. He finds his dad. They're living in their in his old childhood home still, and he has a nice little talk with them. He has a dinner with them. It's very wholesome and sweet. And then he realizes there's another Barry coming home. So that's it. That's all we get to see of Flash's mom. So he runs outside. And it becomes the Barry show, the two Barrys, where they interact and yada yada yada, and they're starting to bicker. It's very comedic. The younger Barry is far more hyperactive and annoying, and suddenly this Barry, who was annoying in the present timeline, is now the straight man to the wild and hyperactive younger Barry, and it's just some people might find it funny. I didn't. But then we learn slowly throughout the next hour runtime that Barry has to get this other Barry to get his powers, because he thinks that if this Barry doesn't get his powers, that he won't get his powers. And we don't know about the timeline multiverse thing yet, because we haven't met Batman who explains this. So he gives the second Barry powers by recreating the accident. And then the two of them turn on the TV and see that General Zod is coming to Earth looking for Superman. At least the Flash thinks he's looking for Superman. So he tries to assemble the Justice League, find out where the Justice League members are. And I explained what happened to that. Victor Creed, Cyborg, and Victor Stone. Not Victor Creed. Victor Stone. He's not Cyborg. He never had an accident. He is a football star or whatever. So he's out. And then he just Googles Wonder Woman into the to a computer and thinks that he'll find him. Do you know how hard Batman had to work in Batman vs. Superman just to find out a single piece of evidence in a hacked server of Wonder Woman in World War II? Or was it World War One? He had to hack and find Wonder Woman that way. He found her that way. What makes you think you'll find Wonder Woman through a Google search? Well, so Flash can't find Wonder Woman, so he just gives up. He doesn't say, "Hey, Bruce, could you help me find Wonder Woman?" No, they just give up. He just gives up. But then he realizes that Batman exists in this timeline. So he goes to find Batman. He goes to Wayne Manor, and he meets Michael Keaton's Batman for the Tim Burton movies, which means the Tim Burton movies are canon to this new timeline that Flash is in. And this, Bruce explains, that time works like a bowl of spaghetti. You got all these bowls of spaghetti. Each noodle represents a timeline. Each one of these little noodles represents a timeline. And sometimes those timelines can intersect at certain points, which are focal points where an event has to happen. But when you go to this moment in time and you change something, you change the past from both intersecting timelines. Basically, what Bruce is trying to explain here is that, let's say you got two timelines who are running parallel to one another. So if he goes to this point in time to change something, he's from here, and he goes back to here to change something. Technically, what happened here is that he is here. This is his present. He goes back to this point in time, which is this point in time, to change something, and he hopes to hop along this timeline back to here, but he changed something, so now he's hopping along this timeline back to here. But on this timeline, there is a different past. So a different past has happened in this altered timeline from this little flashpoint. It's whatever, and how Michael Keaton knows this, I don't know. Maybe he had a Batman adventure after the second Keaton Batman movie where some time travel shenanigans happened. Who knows? Time travel has happened in Batman before, I guess. Ra's al Ghul may have done something, I don't know. But maybe you could leave that up to interpretation, how Michael Keaton's Batman knows this. And the reason why I think they chose Michael Keaton's Batman, Bruce Wayne, to be in this timeline is because this is a movie that exists in a world where Spider-Man No Way Home happened. And that might be the only reason why. No Way Home capitalized on the Spider-Man nostalgia by bringing the other two Spider-Man in, the other two Peter Parkers from the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, and from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 1 through 3. Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield show up in Spider-Man No Way Home, indicating that all timelines are canon to the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. The Flash is trying to do the same thing here by saying the Tim Burton Batmans, the Schumacher Batmans, technically two there because each Batman was a different Batman, Val Kilmer and George Clooney. So that he's saying those two Batmans, the Christian Bale Batman, the new one with Robert Pattinson, that Batman, the Bruce Wayne from the Gotham TV show, the Bruce Wayne from the Joker standalone movie, all of these Batmans, all these potential Batmans, they are all canon in this bowl of soup timeline that Michael Keaton's Batman explains. And they're all different points in time, and all the Supermans are also there, because they also show all the Supermans being there, even the potential Superman that never happened with Nicolas Cage, which they CGI'd in here, so that was a nice little nod. Good job, movie. What else? I'm trying to think, what else? So there's basically capitalizing on nostalgia bait, and the what's the guy's name? He's from Oingo Boingo. I know his name, but I can't remember it. Danny Elfman. How did I forget that? Danny Elfman's Batman theme plays while Michael Keaton's Batman's doing his Batman thing. And it's impossible not to grin like a fool whenever that happens. Whenever the theme comes on, you are grinning like a stupid fool the whole time. Even though you're mad that this is Bruce Wayne and not Thomas Wayne. You could be mad, but you're still really happy to see the Tim Burton Batman back. Because the Michael Keaton Batman was amazing. It is an amazing theme by Danny Elfman, and I was super happy to hear it again. That I almost completely forgot that I was pissed off that this is Bruce Wayne and not Thomas Wayne. You could have done one thing right, movie. Michael Keaton is roughly the age that Thomas Wayne should be in the Flashpoint timeline. And Thomas Wayne took his mask off, and his hair is white. It's gray. He's older than Bruce. It's canonically older. So Michael Keaton could have played Thomas Wayne. He even acts like Thomas Wayne a little bit. He's like jaded. He like has no hope for all this stuff. He's just hanging out at the Wayne Manor drinking, and he doesn't want to get involved in stopping Zod and saving the world and all that stuff. He's done. He's playing Thomas Wayne's character as Bruce. They did this just for nostalgia, just so you could hear the theme, and it worked. People love Michael Keaton's Batman in this movie. I loved Michael Keaton's Batman in this movie. I wanted Thomas Wayne in this movie, though. This is adapting the Flashpoint Paradox storyline. At least give us something to bookend it for Batman. The one emotional thing that even brought me to tears by being a Batman fan for 25 plus years, seeing the letter that Thomas Wayne gets to send to his son that Bruce gets to read. That was cathartic as heck. It doesn't get to happen. This Bruce Wayne doesn't interact with Batfleck's Batman. We don't ever see Batfleck's Batman ever again after this. There's no lesson that this Batman gets to teach the new Bruce. There's nothing. It's gone. And that is sad. That is very sad that one of the heartstrings, the heart of the Flashpoint Paradox for the Batman character isn't in this, because this is a Justice League movie. It isn't just a Flash movie. It is a Justice League movie. It's about all of these guys. Everybody gets to do something here. We get the perspectives from all of them. These two become villains. This guy is a hero. He becomes an anti-hero, and he has to bring these two together to stop these two from destroying the world. And they have to find Superman as well. In this, it's two Flashes teaming up with Michael Keaton's Batman to rescue Supergirl, who has been captured in a secret Russian facility where she's probably been her whole life, because they're copying the Rescue Superman storyline from Flashpoint, but they're replacing Superman with Supergirl. So this is Kara Zor-El, and she's not blonde in this timeline, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with that. I should be pissed off about that, but with all the changes they're doing, this is minuscule. Fine, she doesn't have to be blonde, but I don't know why she's even in this. This should be Superman. This should be Superman that they're fighting. You know, Green Lantern's in this as well, but he never got his ring in the Flashpoint timeline. He gets to fly an alien ship into an Atlantean ship to try to stop the Doomsday Weapon, and he dies, sadly, which is, sorry, goodbye Hal Jordan and all that stuff, but I don't know. But that's because there's no Green Lantern, whatever. So they find Kara Zor-El in the government facility, the Russian facility, and they break her out, and they try to convince the Flashes try to convince her that they're her friends and that humanity is worth saving, and that she has to go stop Zod. Because for some reason, the Flash decided to bring Zod in as the Doomsday storyline, instead of bringing Jason Momoa and Wonder Woman's actress, whose name I can't remember it. Wonder Woman and Aquaman. Instead of Wonder Woman and Aquaman being the two who we have their solo movies. We know what Themyscira looks like. We know what Atlantis looks like. We know what the Atlanteans and the Amazonians have had a long hatred of one another from a schism happening forever ago. The Romeo and Juliet thing that happened that broke them and caused them to fight to destroy the world. Is Doomsday event should have been a war between Aquaman, played by Jason Momoa, and Wonder Woman, played by Gal Gadot. That's it! Played by Gal Gadot. Jason Momoa, Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman should have had their armies fighting each other, destroying the world. And Supergirl should have teamed up with Batman, who should have been Thomas Wayne. You could keep the same actor. He's the same age as Thomas now. But you should have made this Thomas Wayne instead of Batman. Supergirl should be an emaciated Superman. And you should have tried to stop the war, and it should have failed. And the other Flash, which should be Malcolm Thawne, tries to save the two friends that he made, Batman and Supergirl. He tries to save them from Zod. And he keeps failing. And this Flash says, oh, it's because this is an intersection point. In the bowl of spaghetti, this is an intersection point where an event has to happen because it happens in multiple timelines or whatever. This is what happens. This is how it happens. And then they break their own rules, too. Because, they do go back in time a couple minutes to try to save Batman and Supergirl, but in the timeline that they go to, which is a few minutes prior to their present, there should be two Flashes also already there. Just trying to be consistent, movie. I'm just trying to be consistent. There should be two more Flashes here, so there'd be 4 Flashes. And then they go back and try to change it again. There should be 8 Flashes. This is, oh, gosh. They break their rule at the end. They kind of jump the shark there and break their rules and force an ending that they want to happen, which is Flash, the original Flash, has to go back and undo what he did to take the can of tomatoes, put it back on the shelf, but he tries to slightly change the timeline a little bit by making the security camera, by moving the tomatoes to a top shelf so that his dad, who got imprisoned for killing his mom, which he never did, gets to have a more solid alibi because he was at the store buying tomatoes while his mom died. So he moved the tomatoes of the past to a different location or whatever, using his flashy Speed Force powers, which enabled the new camera footage to show the alibi for his dad. And then, instead of a heartfelt letter from a father who lost his son to a son who lost his father, instead of one of the most emotional scenes in the entirety of DC, one of the most heartfelt, moving me to tears moments, instead of one of the most amazing moments in the entirety of DC to me happening, they treat the bookended Batman as a joke. The Flash comes out, he gets a call from Bruce Wayne, and Bruce says he's pulling up now to congratulate him on winning the case and saving his dad from being imprisoned. And out walks George Clooney. From the Batman movie that was treated as a joke. From the Batman movie that the fandom viewed to be the worst one. A hilarious one, to be sure. A beloved one that everybody loves to laugh at. This is George Clooney Batman. And Flash goes like, wait a minute. You're not the Batman that I remember. And then they end the film that way. They ended with a joke. And the heartfelt moments with the Flash's mom don't necessarily feel as strong because they don't necessarily build up that moment. They try, but it didn't feel as heartfelt as it could have been. That this Barry feeling tortured by wanting to do one thing to save one person, and he ended up destroying the world. You feel that. And this is they just ended. And then I guess he tries to go back and undoes even the tomatoes at the grocery store to put his father back in prison to make it exactly how it was before he left, to make Batfleck come back. And then he says to Jason Momoa in the post-credit scene, in every altered timeline, you're the same guy. And Momoa goes like, oh, yada, blah, blah, blah. So I'm guessing the Aquaman 2 theoretically could be an Aquaman 2 that the first Aquaman may have been very different in happening. I don't know. I guess that's what they're trying to say, because the Flash changed the events. This film had the opportunity to reset the DC Cinematic Universe into a new James Gunn timeline. It missed the beat, missed everything. It completely lost all of the potential and decided to nostalgia bait you via Spider-Man No Way Home multiverse shenanigans, which we did enjoy seeing this Batman, and I have no problems with the Supergirl character by itself. I don't think she belongs in this movie, but I would have loved to see a solo movie with this character, played by this actress. I would have loved to see that. I don't think she fits here. I don't think Zod fits here. This should have been about the core members. Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Batman, and Flash, and Cyborg. It should have been these 5 characters, which did show up in the Justice League Snyderverse movie. You could have brought them back for the Flash. You could have just called this Flashpoint instead of just Flash, but whatever. They decided to go the route that they went. And I will say this, though. I'm only disappointed in the Flash because I know about the Flashpoint Paradox storyline and the comic storyline. There's another amazing thing that happens with Flashpoint. A few years later, they decided to revisit the Flashpoint timeline, where Flash and Batman, Bruce Wayne's Batman, visit the Flashpoint timeline again to meet up with Thomas Wayne again. And Batman actually gets to meet his father face to face. And Zoom's there as well. He tears up the letter that Thomas wrote to Bruce so that it never got to Bruce or whatever. And it's very, very heartfelt. It's very heartfelt. Especially when they have to part, or Flash and Batman have to go back to their timeline, and Batman's saying goodbye to Thomas, and Thomas actually gets to say his goodbye to Batman in person. And his farewell speech is one of the most heartbreaking things, because Batman, Bruce Wayne's Batman, one of the most composed characters, the guy who has mastered his emotions over years, the stoicest character you could have ever met, breaks down and becomes a child again, reaching out like a child for his father, shouting that he can save him, shouting for Flash to let go of him, to let him reach out for his father. And Thomas just steps back and removes his cowl and says, Bruce was his whole world. And he lost that in this timeline. And he's very happy that there's one where his son is alive, even if he's not. And he's okay with that. And he wants Bruce to stop being Batman. Let Batman die with Thomas Wayne. He wants Bruce to get out there, live a life, find a wife, have kids, be happy. It's very heartfelt and emotional, and you feel that emotion. It really tugs at your heartstrings. It's a comic page, and it tugs at you, especially after watching this. It's like a new little sequel to that moment. And it is so powerful, so emotionally powerful, especially if you're a Batman fan like me. And as a Batman fan, I'm very happy to see Michael Keaton's Batman, but I just feel like if you wanted Michael Keaton's Batman, you should just made a Batman 3 in the Michael Keaton Batman timeline, like a Dark Knight Returns type of story where he puts the cowl back on and goes out as a middle-aged Batman to solve crime and stuff. You could have done that, and you could have had Thomas Wayne be in this storyline to make it a more emotional storyline, because this is a Justice League story that you're trying to make just about the Flash, but even then you ended up failing with that because it's also about Batman and Supergirl. Back to what I was saying, though, that the only reason I'm not as okay with this movie is because I love the Flashpoint Paradox story so much. I am such a big fan of this storyline. I love this movie. I've watched it twice. I'll watch it a third time, fourth time, fifth time. I may even read the comics. I never read comics. That's how much I like this storyline. It is amazing. It's so powerful with Thomas Wayne and Bruce Wayne, too. Great Batman stuff. The reason why this didn't work is because of that. But if this doesn't exist in your world, if you've never watched the Flashpoint Paradox DCAU movie, if you've never even read a single comic book in your life, and you've only ever watched the live action movies, you watch the Tim Burton movies, you love those movies, you've watched the Schumacher Batman movies, and you're okay with those movies, you've watched the Nolan Batman movies, you watched The Batman with Robert Pattinson, and you've watched the Snyderverse movies. If you've only ever watched the movies, the live action ones, then I will honestly say that The Flash will be fine for you. You will be perfectly fine watching this movie if you don't have any knowledge of Flashpoint Paradox, which you now do, having watched this video all the way to the end. I have told you everything that has happened in Flashpoint Paradox. The best things in the DC, in my opinion, one of the best Batman moments in the entirety of DC, in my opinion, is in Flashpoint Paradox. And yeah, if you don't have any of that knowledge, and you just watch the Snyderverse movies, and you like Tim Burton's Batman as well, then The Flash is going to be fine for you. You're going to love it. You are. I honestly think that you're going to love this movie if you haven't seen any of this other stuff. It's because of my crimes of being a big Batman fan, knowing all of the Batman stuff, the TV series, the multiple TV series, and the DCAU movies and all this stuff. Because I'm such knowledgeable about that stuff is why I'm angry about this. But you could say that for a lot of things, honestly. For example, the Rings of Power that I completely roasted on a previous video of mine. If you had never watched the original Lord of the Rings movies, if you never watched the Hobbit movies, if you've never read a single book, and you just watched the Rings of Power by itself, you'd probably like it, honestly. You probably would like it. But it's fans of that IP that got upset, if that makes sense. Fans of the story that The Flash is adapting, Flashpoint Paradox, are a little bit upset that this story is so different. Though we're happy to see Batman. We're happy to see Michael Keaton's Batman, because it worked. The nostalgia bait worked. That Danny Elfman Batman theme playing in this movie worked. It was so good. I grinned like a child again. I was a happy little fool listening to the Danny Elfman theme seeing the Batmobile, the Batplane, and all the cool stuff. Seeing Batman do his Batman thing, it was amazing to see that again. It was. I'm going to give you this film 2 scores. The first score is as a DC fan, all of it. And the second score is just as a movies fan. The first score, I would probably say I would give this a 4.5 out of 10. I had fun with it. I could watch it. But I got upset with it at many points for all of the changes that it made that it didn't really need to. You could have added Gal Gadot and Jason Momoa to this film. You could have had Michael Keaton play Thomas Wayne, since he's basically playing the same character, just as this Batman instead, Bruce Wayne instead. You could have had him play Thomas Wayne. You could have had Jason Momoa and Gal Gadot in here. And you could, I would argue you could even keep Supergirl. Yeah, I could argue, since you can't bring Cavill in, fine. She's fine. You should have brought in also the guy who played Cyborg from the Justice League movie. Give him an alternate storyline here. Set that up. You have 2.5 hours. This film had 80 minutes to tell this story. You have 2.5 hours. I think you could do that. You could set up a war between Jason Momoa and Gal Gadot, Aquaman and Wonder Woman. You could set up a jaded Thomas Wayne, played by Michael Keaton. You can even bring the theme in, if you want. And you can have Supergirl do her Supergirl thing. You rescue her from the government facility. And Flash do his Flash thing. The only issue is, what's the villain? Flash's villain, not like the villain of the Flashpoint timeline. What is the villain? Why not make the villain the Flash himself? Well, you technically do. It's another Barry that's the villain. But I'd say you don't need another Barry. Flash is his own villain. His emotions. He goes back out of selfishness to save his mom. And as a result, creates a timeline that is doomed to fail no matter what he does. And so Thomas Wayne, Batman, has to tell Flash that he has to go back and fix the timeline to save his son, even if it means he has to die, because he's willing to do that. And that's the meaning of sacrifice for the greater good, is a character arc that you could take this Flash down so that he goes back to the past and fixes what he did and creates a new fixes the timeline. And you can have the Thomas Wayne, played by Michael Keaton, give Flash a letter to Bruce Wayne, and you can give me my Batman moment. I want to see that. I wanted to see that in this. I desperately wanted to see that, and I didn't see it. Instead, we got a George Clooney joke. That's why this is a 4.5. But as a movie fan in general, if you're just the DC movie fan, the live-action ones, you just watched those, and you watched the Tim Burton movies, then this film's probably going to be more like a 7 out of 10 for you. You're going to like it. You're going to watch it. You're going to enjoy it. It might not be the best DC movie, but it's not the worst one either. You're going to enjoy it, and that's it. But to me, it's a 4.5 because of what they could have done. And they had every ability, every chance. The Snyderverse set up enough characters that they could have done that. But they didn't.